Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. I hope this finds you in good health and secure. I'll remind you right off the bat, go ahead and like and subscribe to this video, just as an act of bodhisattva to help promote this video throughout YouTube and expand our Sangha. Yeah? Okay. As you've no doubt noticed, the last few videos, I've been experimenting with video camera settings, trying to get smoother video, still experimenting. It's just a constantly changing target. Hopefully this will work out. I've been talking a lot lately about new books available on the threefoldlotus.com website as ebooks that you can then avoid the costs of printing and shipping and all that. And making them available in print form on the bookstore, lulu.com/spotlight/Kwun. And I don't have them in hand. You know, I like a physical book, especially when I'm doing these things like the last set of videos we completed on the profound meaning of the Daimoku. Because I can mark them up and mark where we are. So I'm going to try something different today. I don't have a physical copy of the book yet. It's on order. It's on its way. I always get, actually it's required to get a copy of the book as an artist proof to then go through it once more. Because you always find something, oops, I missed this, or typos, that kind of thing. So I'm going to work from a PDF, which I think is what you'll get if you buy an e-book. It may be, Lulu may translate it into an e-book format, not sure. Anyway, this particular book I'm reading from is on one of the three main sticking points, stumbling blocks, misunderstandings of contemporary discussions on Lotus Sutra practice, certainly via Nichiren's doctrine. I'm talking about the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. This book I'll go into Tendai's elucidations on this, and I'll demonstrate more to the point, and I haven't seen this anywhere. Nichiren talks about the lifespan chapter as being the nexus of his discovery in Shakyamuni's own sermon about this concept of the 3,000 realms. It's not something Tendai invented, but it's something Tendai elucidated, Miao-lo, Dengyo, and now Nichiren. And so I'm going to trace this lineage from Shakyamuni through Tendai. I couldn't find anything. There's very little to read on Dengyo other than biographical. Unfortunate. I'd like to read some of his scholarship. If some of you know where that's available, I'd like to know. Let me know. And certainly Nichiren has said a bunch about it. So I've collected that in a small volume called the 3,000 Realms. Ta-da! And I actually say quite a lot myself. I don't just amass these documents, but I interject and add annotations to point things out that might not otherwise be obvious on first reading. And in the preface, in the foreword, which is lengthy, go figure, I start by saying that the formation of the universe itself, with everything it comprises, is the priori truth that Buddhism proposes the perception of in the sentient mind as the opportunity to use as a mechanism of release from the incessant identification and cataloging of the human observational mind. I know I can be guilty of word salad as well, but if you read on, I think I'll unwind that so you know what I'm saying. The next paragraph, I say the human mind, even prior to its introduction to the physical world, outside of the womb, is constantly identifying, analyzing, and collecting data of its surroundings and its conditions. Now, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, okay, questions, right? That statement is based on things I've talked about several times, and you may not have come across yet. That the birth, your birth, my birth, the birth of a human is not, as we're constantly taught in cultures, religions, societies, a shared biology of mother and father. In Buddhism, we don't look at human beings as simply physical things, as does our sciences. In Buddhism, we do recognize the physicalness of identity, and in that we have a mother and a father. The biologies are different. I mean, we're not stupid. But in Buddhism, we always have this very important aspect of consciousnesses. And those consciousnesses, 8 of them, all develop within the physical being. And there's a 9th consciousness, though, that is without time, beginningless time. It is the consciousness of, and I shouldn't call it a consciousness because it only appears in the human mind, the sentient mind, but there is the impetus of formations of energy that are involved in the creation of everything, in the construction of everything. Our ability to witness that, to understand that, is the 9th consciousness, our Buddha-ness. The other 8 consciousnesses are about perception. Not only the mechanism of perception, like seeing and hearing and tasting and feeling, and those senses are consciousnesses in Buddhism, but also the consciousness of the collection of karma that we express, that we represent in our instantiation as a human being. Now, if you understand what I'm saying right there, that 8th consciousness, the 7th, but mostly the 8th, the alaya, the repository of our karmic engine, momentum, that karmic momentum begins in the universe as a whole long before it starts to whittle its way into manifesting itself, which is when it discovers an opportunity with the male and female karmic engines to fit and instantiate its self, its presence, its expression. So this is a third party. The mother, physically, but with her own karmic freight train of momentum, combining with the male, physical, and also, we could say spiritual, but karmic entity, freight train, which those two are interplaying now as a mated pair, form a portal, an opportunity for this third entity of karmic flow, momentum, to dovetail into and express itself. And because it's a fit, a resonance, then there are 3 karmic engines folding into the one in order for it to express itself. So I, as well as you, and your brothers and sisters, and your cousins, and everyone you know on the planet, and everyone you don't know on the planet, is a melding of one's own karmic engine with aspects resonating throughout our engine of manifestation our parents and their parents and their parents. You see how this just continues? But make no mistake, you are your own entity. You are not your mother. You are not your father. You are not your grandfather or your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. However, there are aspects of their karmic engine that you resonate with. This explains a lot in Buddhism, in life. But what is Buddhism if not a magnifying glass on the nature of life itself? That's what we're all about. That's why this isn't a religion. This is about witnessing a very intimate experience of the engine of life, the entirety of phenomena of which we are one and several at once. Make sense? So this idea of the 3,000 realms, as I continue here, this ceaseless activity of the mind to collect, right? Which emerges from the physical manifestation of energies that comprise us individually, is what Buddhism labels the samsara condition. This constant identification and cataloging, right? That's the samsara condition of the sentient mind. Now, before you manifest physically, there is no sentient mind. There's only causation, right? Drive, momentum of this formations, right? It's only when we physically instantiate that the consciousnesses start to form. Eyes, ears, tongue, skin, right? The eighth consciousness is involved in forming that freight train of karma. But until you manifest into those consciousnesses, there is no sentience. It's important to understand. When you hear people talking about the consciousness of the universe, walk away. They don't understand this process. Now, a condition whose only priori motivation is survival and the possession of any and all things physical, emotional, appeasing, and securing, in a word, craving. That's what Buddhism identifies from the very moment of manifestation of that karmic engine into the physical realm. You have craving. Without craving, you wouldn't penetrate or manifest within the physical realm. Samsara is the first expression of craving. So, we talk a nasty bit about craving, but the fact of the matter is, without craving, you wouldn't even be. So, this is why. Now, you see why this confusion about how is samsara enlightenment at the same time? How is the regular life that we live also the environment of enlightenment? For this reason. It isn't the craving that's the problem. It's the attachment, the reliance, the constant mesmerizing of craving that's the problem. How do we get our minds to let the craving happen, but stand outside of it? That paradigm shift I'm always talking about. Well, there it is in the 3,000 realms. It's such an important concept in Buddhism, and so few really understand it. That's why this book. And you hear me use the word priori. That's from Latin. The basis of anything to be starts with a primary condition, tendency. There are certain beneath fundamental conditions that need to exist in order for then the progress to happen, the priori point. Where philosophy would identify this activity of the mind as behavior, it's kind of like after the train has left the station, Buddhism takes the view that craving is evidence of a more fundamental process, a process of instantiation from potential that begins or functions prior to the emergence of the mind, as I just explained. Potential itself, fields of energy, begin or being quiescent energy, noumena, nothing happening. In modern scientific research and analysis, one could say that all matter and mass breaks down, going backwards, to fundamental tendencies and conditions of energy moving through time-space as fields of influence and analysis breaks down energy moving through time-space field and manifestations of fields of energy. All matter, break down any particle, and it's simply an assemblage of energies in certain states. It's an amalgam. But what creates the amalgam? How does the amalgam begin, right? This is what quantum is trying to answer. Imagine 3,000 years ago, Shakyamuni figuring this out. Blows my mind. Energy that passes or is agitated by influence or conditions to bring about a process of formation that either succeeds, quote unquote, in the production or construction of some thing, quote unquote, or simply recedes or devolves into quiescence potential. So there's always this disquiet in the quiescence. The potential manifest, don't manifest. Manifest, don't, right? Depending on tendencies and conditions. To the Buddhist, this activity or process is evidence of more than simple transformation of potentials into instantiations or energy into mass, as Einstein would propose, right? We all know the oversimplification of energy is equal to or related or equatable to mass and the speed of, not light. That's a misnomer too. It's the speed of causation. That's why it's a C. You ever wonder that? C squared? It's the speed of causation. How quickly is a moment? How much time, space occurs in a moment? We talk about it all the time. Life exists moment to moment. How long is a moment? Well, to Planck, it's a certain number of zeros before a 1. To Einstein, it has a speed of occurrence, of causation, where things can or won't be. It's like 3,000 kilometers or 300,000 kilometers per second. All of these are arbitrary measures of a very, 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 very tiny perceptive number. What it actually is, no one can identify. It's just that many moments occur within a certain framework of what we perceive time to be as we created. It's incredibly small. Is enough to operate on, yeah? To the Buddhist, it would appear that this process bears striking resemblance to the autonomic cravings of sentient beings. Right? There's that identification of the process of formations being itself brought about through what one might call craving, a need to be. And a formation must form, yes? What is the engine that makes that happen? The energy that amalgamates or collects into various expressions of form or mass, like the drive of the mind to collect and accumulate data, things, quote unquote, this obsessive behavior begets all manner of mental agitations that the sentient mind obsesses about, having to do with the maintaining of possessions, of its collections, and the further accrual of more, always more. Indeed, it can be argued that much human stress and anxiety is based solely at its fundamental activity of craving and accrual, the fear of loss of these accumulations, and the constant drive to accumulate more. More money, more toys, more relationships, more power, more food, etc. I call this obsession database or warehouse of delusions. You've heard me talk about this a great deal, right? A point of clarity here, I say in the book, Buddhism, or Shakyamuni, is not interested in becoming a scientific scholar or of requiring a student of Buddhism to become expert in the pursuit of scientific research. It's not required. Simply having an idea in our minds of how the process works opens many doors of understanding, right? The point, the goal, the usefulness of this understanding is the simple fact that the human being, when we understand the fundamental nature of anything or endeavor, we cease to be mystified by it. And isn't this the first, a priori, if you will, of the practice of Buddhism? Right? In non-Buddhist life, normal quote, quote, we sort of just move through life, even though we don't understand that we're moving at hundreds of thousands of kilometers per second right now. Our karma is moving through time-space, and we kind of wait, really, to respond to what happens around us. As I've said before, it's kind of like we're just plummeting through time, and as we hit branches of the trees, we go, oh, I'll react and do this. I'll react and do this. We're not really proactive because we're kind of mystified by the whole thing. We're just waiting for something to give us a clue. And this is very unsatisfactory to Buddhism. This is, in fact, what Shakyamuni identifies as the very reason we suffer. We're anxious. We don't know what's going to hit next. We're stressed about what we think we have will protect us. We may not think of it in those terms, but that's how we live life. Stressed and anxious all the time. What are we stressed and anxious about? There's so much we don't, quote, know. So we're always in this position of waiting to find out. And Buddhism says, Shakyamuni says, that ain't no way to live. That if you really want to live your life fully expressed without fear, just boldly moving through life and captaining your ship, well, then you need to get rid of what is making you anxious. It's a pretty simple formula. And so what the 3,000 Realms is proposing, what Shakyamuni proposed from the very get-go is, if you just peer into the true nature of how everything works, how life exists, what the engine of life is, and how it manifests throughout everything you experience, then it's not so mystical, right? When you're a child and you're worried about the boogeyman under the bed, it's because you don't understand darkness, you don't understand. Right, as you get older, you look under the bed and you go, there's my shoes I've lost 3 weeks ago. You laugh at yourself. It's so silly that I would think of it, right? when you finally know the mystifications and all the stress and anxiety that goes along with it, poof, it just evaporates. That's the power of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. Not how complex it is. Not that you have to be a scientist to understand it, but that by understanding the fundamental nature of energy forming into manifestation, and you can witness it all the time, it's no longer a problem. Right? The central issue for Buddhism is how, then, let me go back where I was reading here. To be mystified or unknowing, quote unquote, of anything or process leaves our always active mind free to be influenced by any thought or fear or grasp, ownership, control, etc., and renders power, quote unquote, where none exists. Like the boogeyman under the bed. That power simply isn't there. It's an imagined thing. This simple truth is the nexus for the practice of Buddhism to disconnect our avarice for mystification, precipitating all manner of stress and anxiety, from our knowledge or perception of the fundamental truth of all phenomena, freeing ourselves from our own imagination and mystifications. How many times have you finally conquered a fear of doing something only to find out that the only thing that kept you from it was being afraid of it? And it's kind of embarrassing. The central issue for Buddhism is how then to disconnect this obsessive craving from our life experience such that the result might be a release or a liberation from the constant craving condition. In order to present the sentient mind with the opportunity to experience the true nature, all life, without the attendant attachment of ownership, the mind to have free, quote-unquote, observation of the formations or the transmigrations of energy into form, witnessing thereby the process of formation, what I like to call the engine of life. And our perception of it, Buddha-ness. Yeah? All right. That's enough for today. It is for me anyway. So I hope that gives you a taste of what the 3,000 Realms book will endeavor to uncover, unmystify for you. If there are areas as you read that you go, whoa, 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 you need to go into that more deeply for me, let me know. I'm creating these documents from my own life experience, but I don't pretend to know all life experience. So you may bring something to this discussion that I had not considered before, and that would make it better for all of us. So please share, tlksylvain@gmail.com, or in the comments of this video. And we'll see if we can't make this resource even more universal, because that's the whole point here, to get rid of doubt, to solidify our resolve, to single-mindedly meet our Buddha experience. Yeah? Thanks for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to expand the Sangha. And those of you who can support through Patreon and PayPal, Namo Myo Dengyo, you guys help make all of this possible. So, bodhisattvas you are, yeah? In the meantime, take care of your health. Be kind to yourself. Keep your practice strong, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Myo.